Hi, welcome to episode 10 of my show. I'm Tony McNaboe. We made it. 10 episodes, unbelievable. Only took me a fucking year to do it. Would it have helped if I didn't ghost you guys for 7 weeks at a time every few months? Yeah, sure, that would help a lot. But I can't, choose when these things happen. I know that I had to split for a while in the fall. I had to put pretty much everything in my life down for quite a while, and sort of like I needed to sort of deal with something that was going on and figure all that out. And so I did. I did not foresee that just within a couple months after that, I'd be having to do the same thing again. But such is the case, right? The only difference is this time it's quite a bit simpler and easier to explain, and so that's what I'm going to do. Occasionally, I'll ask you guys for a pass on this, and this is one of those times. I hope that you'll kind of like give me a pass this week on, normally I like to do a lot of post-production stuff, add music, add scoring, add some fucking weird, funny little shit. I think under the circumstances, I'm going to try to like not stress myself too much with that on this particular episode. I'm just going to kind of run through this one, and that way it'll get us sort of like, we'll be back on track again. And then as I start to feel better and better, things will get back to normal. Okay. Sorry about that. It's just what I got to do. It'll be cool. You'll still like it, I think. So what we're going to do is, after I get done talking about everything else, I am going to lay out what my favorite record of 2018 was. I'm acutely aware that it's fucking February right now, okay? But I didn't get to do this 5 weeks ago like everybody else. So at the end of the show today, I am going to reveal what of all of the things that I talked about this year ended up being my favorite record. And in doing so, I'm going to also try to do like a quick rundown, like here's the artist, here's the record, here's the song, of like everything that I talked about on all the past episodes this year. So there's sort of like one comprehensive place for all of it. Okay? I know, it's February, I'm late, and I don't care. How do you like that? I can do whatever the fuck I want. It's my fucking show. And so today, for February 5th or whatever it is, I'm going to tell you what my favorite record of 2018 was. And if you don't like it, you can turn it off. I don't fucking care. But before we do that, just to give you an idea of what's been going on, basically it's this, okay? I was concussed, and I really can't get concussed anymore. I have been concussed too many times, and I thought I had been doing everything right in order to protect myself and keep myself from getting hurt. Okay, like I'm what would be referred to as injury prone. Okay, I have been hurt so many fucking times in my life, from my toes to my head, literally from my toes to my head. Broken toes, broken feet, broken ankles, high ankle sprains. Blew out both of my knees at different times, blew the tendon in my right elbow, sprained wrists, broken hands, so many broken hands, broken fingers, and all too many concussions. All right, and even though it would be interesting, because almost all of those injuries that I just explained to you, almost all of them have got actually a good story to them. Usually it's something boneheaded and ridiculous that I couldn't help myself from doing. Like I literally broke my fucking ankle playing ping pong because I'm too much of a shithead and I'm too stubborn to just like lose a game and let it happen. I have to always go too fucking hard on everything. I got a high ankle sprain playing frisbee because I couldn't just be like, nope, that's too far away. I'm not going to get that. No, I had to run it down and then slide into some shit, and I like a high ankle sprain, which was fucking so bad. That happened like an hour before a show in Hartford that we were supposed to play, so that sucked. But like, I could spend a whole episode talking about all this stuff, and most of it would be very interesting. But I want to focus on just this particular issue of like concussions and also what may or may not have happened over the holiday season that I think led us to where we are right now. Okay, so about 5 years ago, I hit my head the most recent time, and it was a fucking bad one. It was a really bad one. It was not only the 8th or 9th concussion that I've had in my life, it also was like a severe one. And you've probably heard, or you may already know, that like concussions are progressive. So the more of them you get, the more severe the symptoms get and the longer they hang around for. So this one 5 years ago, although it was the most recent, it wasn't the most interesting. Like, there were some very, like, for instance, like, before that, about 10 years ago, just one story. We had what my friends and I now refer to as the Sergeant Slaughter incident, and that was the night when when an army guy, a really fucking big, burly, and psychotic fucking army guy in uniform, got his hands on me, and that guy. He put it on me pretty good, that guy. And I don't mean like he roughed me up and I lost the fight. I mean, like, this dude fucking tuned me up, put me in the hospital. My head was busted open, and I had a bruise on my neck for a week in the shape of a large man's hand, where he wrapped his hand around my larynx, completely made a fist around my throat, and basically charged me back into a brick wall and busted my head all open. It was a fucking crazy story. And I will tell it one day, because it actually was the cap of probably the most insane day of my life from morning to night, and that in itself will make a good episode someday. What I will say is this, and I will tell this story more in depth someday, but what I will say is this: I was in the fucking right that night. I was not looking for trouble. I was not being a fucking, smart. I was doing the right thing. And even though I don't like the residual effect, obviously, I don't like the outcome of the whole thing, I do think I did the right thing. And if I had it to do all over again, I would probably do the exact same shit. But anyway, we'll get to the Sergeant Slaughter story another time. But anyway, so here's the little background on everything. 5 years ago, I hit my head, finally, like the big one, all right? And this one was actually pretty innocent. Really, all I was doing was fooling around inside of a trampoline with my best friend's wife. That was it. Now, I know that doesn't sound that innocent, but really it was. We had just come back from our class reunion, and it was only like 6 of us, and we had gone back to my friend Greg's house, and we're sitting around. He had this nice fire pit out in his backyard. They had this trampoline over in the corner of their yard, which they had for their 2 little girls who weren't there that night. And we're sitting around this fire, and it's about 2 a.m. at this point. We had been at our class reunion. It was a nice day, and Greg's wife said, "Let's get in the trampoline." To his credit, my friend immediately said, "No, nobody in the trampoline. It's too dark. It's too late." And it was pitch dark where the trampoline is. It's too dark. It's too late. And we're too drunk. Nobody's getting the trampoline. Now, a thing about me, if you've made your friends' wives and girlfriends fucking angry at you as many times as I have in my life, you learn something. Every time you piss off your friend's wife or girlfriend, what happens after that behind the scenes is they get really pissed off at your friend. And then you know what happens? Your friend also gets really pissed off at you, because now they've got a fucking angry wife. And for however many hours or however many days, this shit's going to have to carry on for them and make them miserable. So you end up with 2 people mad at you. Through that, I've learned to always follow the wife or the girlfriend. Because you know what? If my friend gets pissed off at me, we'll get over that. My friends have been getting pissed off at me for 25 years, pretty much regularly. I'm always doing something. And they've gotten pretty used to sort of like being like, it's McNabo again. And we can get through that. I can deal with that. But just don't piss off the wife or the girlfriend. So I always follow their lead now. So his wife really wanted to get in there. So I said, fuck it. I climbed in with her. And we were only in there for about 30 or 40 seconds. At least I was. And she got in first, and the first thing I did was get in as quickly as I could and jump right next to her and try to like pop her up in the air. You know that game and the trampoline? And so she kind of goes popping up in the air. She's laughing, and she lands again, and I try to jump close. Now I'm going higher and higher, and I jump close to her again, and now she really goes flying, and she's trying really desperately to get on her feet, but every time she tries to, there I am jumping right next to her, and she goes flying, and so she's laughing, I'm laughing. It was just a great 30 or 40 seconds. Next thing I know, the last thing I remember, I did this one sort of like horizontal jump in her direction. And you know that game where you like, if you try to both land exactly right at the just opposite time from each other, one of you is going to get absolutely fucking launched? Well, I did this one jump over to her and I landed and I went up. And I very, very, very specifically remember just going up into the air and like everything got really slow and really quiet. And I thought to myself, I feel like I should be coming down by now. But yet, I'm still going up. And next thing I knew, I felt that rim of like that outer sort of basket, like the little guard that they have on these trampolines, you know? I felt that shit on like my hip. And I went right out and through and over this thing and fell right out of the trampoline down onto the back of my head, probably about 10 feet. And I was out. So the thing about it is that sometime later, I sort of like rolled over on my side and, you know, like looked around like, what the fuck? And Jamie had already gone back to the fire and everybody was just sitting over there. Nobody was looking over at me. Nobody was yelling to me or anything like that. Everybody's just sitting back over at the fire. And I'm like, what the fuck? And I slowly get up and I walk back over and, you know, first thing I asked Jamie, I asked his wife, I was like, am I bleeding? And she checked my head. I'm not bleeding. And I'm looking at my friend Greg and he won't even make eye contact with me. He's just shaking his head. And all he said was, I told you not to get in there. And I said, sure, okay, that's fine. I'm sorry. But I just fell on my fucking head and went out and he goes, good, that's what you get. And just stone cold. And that's how most of my friends usually respond to anything now. They don't respond when I get hurt. And I do get hurt a lot. And it's usually from some boneheaded shit to the point where like now when I get hurt, my friends just get mad at me. There's no compassion. They just get mad at me. And, you know, like I never get credit for like not doing something stupid when I otherwise could have, you know, like it's never, I never get any accolades for doing something right. You know, all the time, people suggest that, you know, I should be proud. You know, they never say they're proud of me, but they suggest that I should be proud. I get that all the time, but it's usually like, I hope you're proud of yourself, or, another one I get a lot is proud of yourself now, or you should really be proud of yourself. You know, something like that. That shit happens all the time. But that's really about the best it gets for me. So that whole thing happened. A week goes by. Next thing I know, I can't get out of bed. I wake up in the morning, the fucking whole entire room's spinning. I can't stand up. I sat up in my bed. I fell out of my bed. I tried to stand up from the floor. I couldn't stand up. I had to lean against the wall the whole way down, get myself to the bathroom where I was puking and everything else. And then literally for about 11 months after that, nothing changed. I mean, it was like a really, really severe fucking thing. I've watched sports my whole life. I've seen a dozen of my favorite athletes retire from concussions. Prior to this one, I had concussions. And I was thought to myself, like, man, I've had a concussion. Like, you don't leave the whole season. You don't walk away from your career over that shit. That's crazy. What a bunch of pussies, I used to think. Well, now this time I was put down. I was fucking out of it for about 11 months. I couldn't finish my sentences when I tried to talk to people. I made no sense when I talked to people. It got to the point where I stopped leaving my apartment. I stopped going out and seeing people. I stopped socializing because socializing had become so embarrassing because I would completely blank in the middle of what'd you have for lunch today, Tony? Oh, I had a bowl of pasta with a red sauce and then I just get completely lost. I couldn't remember what I was talking about or where I was going at the end of the sentence. Not to mention, I was having these like complete blackouts, like sober cognitive blackouts where my brain just shut off. One night, I went downstairs from my apartment to have a cigarette before I went to bed. Okay, so all I brought with me were my keys and my smokes and a lighter. Right? I'm down there. Next thing I know, 45 minutes later, I come around and I'm in fucking aisle 4 of the grocery store with a half a basket full of groceries. I have no idea why I need any of this shit. I don't remember picking any of it out. I don't remember going to the grocery store. I have nothing. I'm in my fucking pajama bottoms with nothing but my car keys. I don't even have my wallet. How the fuck did I get here? That sort of shit started happening a lot. And so a lot of weird shit was happening, and it also got really fucking dark. Like 6, 7, 8 months into it with nothing changing, having to hold on to the spout every morning that I take a shower, wash myself with one hand and hold on to the spout with the other hand so that I didn't fall over. Every day started with like at least 2 hours of insane vertigo. Some days, depending on what happened the night before, that would be prolonged. Other days it would only be for a couple of hours. I had to move my bed downstairs from my room because the risk of falling down the stairs every morning when I got up for work was too high. I had to start going down the stairs on my bottom every morning so that I didn't fall. So I moved all my shit downstairs. I couldn't watch hockey at all. It's just like this big bright white screen and these little figures moving around quickly and the camera angles changing, and you get so fucking dizzy and so confused. And that was really depressing. Basically, bright light, direct sunlight, and loud noises were way off limits. And so as a result, I had to put everything in my life down. I had to stop playing music. I quit. For 1 year of my life, I couldn't play my drums. I couldn't write any music because unfortunately, I've got a couple of friends and so many artists that I love who are able to write songs sort of topically. They just tell stories. Tom Waits is a great example of it. That kid Andy Schaaf, who I've talked about and will talk about again. He's really good at that, but I can't do that. I have to write stuff that I have experienced or felt. It's kind of just the only way that I can do it. But the thing with a concussion is that you flatline emotionally. You don't really feel any highs or lows. You're just kind of like everything's very linear. Except when you have these weird little points in a concussion where like you just start crying for no reason. And then there comes a point where it just gets real dark. And again, like you get on month 7, 8 and nothing's changing and you're staring at yourself in the mirror and you're realizing that like you can recognize your face and you recognize your fingernails when you look at your hands. Everything on your body on the outside, you still recognize it. It's all still there, but the brain inside your head is no longer your own. You are no longer driving the ship. All right. So many times it felt like I'm not in control of any of this. The things that I say, my filter was gone, which is really bad for a person like me. My filter was totally gone. You say some of the craziest shit. You write emails that make no fucking sense, right? And you start looking in the eyes of this thing and it's like, I remember very specifically one night standing in my bathroom mirror and just staring at myself for like 10 minutes and thinking, I'm just trapped inside this body. I don't have anything to do with what it does anymore. I just have to go along with it. And I don't recognize this brain. It doesn't feel like me. It doesn't resemble me in any way. And I can't get out. And that was on like 7 months. So it carried on that way for another 4 months or so. And it was about 11 months into it before I started to come out of the fog. And it was probably more than a year before I could even sit down and start playing my drums again, before I could start trying to write music again, and the process of doing that is sort of like you have to try to remember your whole method to writing music, something that I think still hasn't come back to me, something that probably never will fully, but you try to do your best with it. You try to make the most of what you still do have left up there. And drums were the same way. It's like trying to remember all of the muscle memory. Like when I went down, I was like really at the top. Like I was playing better than I ever had. I was very pleased with how things were going. I was still learning new shit constantly. And now I basically had to just the very basic shit, just remember how to hit a snare drum correctly again, So after being away from it for over a year, it was still another year of work just to get back to close to who I was before I stopped, So 2 years out of the game, and in the music business, that will fuck you, okay? It's enough to almost ruin everything. It's a very out of sight, out of mind business, and there's a lot of people involved in it that I'd toured with, people that I'd worked with. It's a publishing company that I was signed to, that I was writing for, and all those people had to sort of like let me go because I couldn't play or make music anymore, and B, I was talking like a fucking psycho all the time. So everybody kind of took a real big step back from me. And the prospect of trying to connect all those dots again, extremely overwhelming, extremely unlikely, and frustrating. But with a lot of work and a lot of time, I actually managed to connect a lot of that stuff again. And it was shortly after that that I got a really, really, really incredible break that I'll always be grateful for. And that was when my dude Gavin, we were talking from across the country in separate Portlands, and he floated the idea of me coming out with him on this next tour. And that was huge for me because I was going to be able to get my foot back into this thing and kind of get back involved. I took that, and that was like, that changed a lot of shit. And that was a real big, chance that he gave me. And that was not just out of music, but as much or more out of like love, I think, and out of friendship and wanting to sort of like help get things rolling again. So that all happened, right? Now, the thing is, since then, that was 5 years ago that the injury happened. And I basically have been on this like, short of wearing a fucking helmet everywhere I go, which is pretty much the next step. I have just been like, okay, I can't fuck around at all. I can't wind up in the wrong place at the wrong time. I can't be at a party or in a bar or at a show. I can't be anywhere where a fucking brawl breaks out around me and I just happen to get stuck in the middle of it at the wrong time in the wrong place. Really, I can't get fucking sucker punched or just fall and hit my head. Like, an impact of that level, I think, if that shit ever happens to me again, I think that the people closest to me are going to be feeding me Jello for the rest of my fucking life. Honestly, like, that's where it's at. So I've been very careful about it. And for 5 years, I've managed to not hurt my head, which for me is a great feat. Okay, so from there, now we have to wind back a little bit, okay? Because something obviously happened, all right? And although it's taken me some time to sort of trace things back, I think there's only one really obvious place where this could have all gone down. And in the last episode, I talked about how I ruined Christmas for 1,200 people. And I even talked about that at the time, unaware of all of this. I talked about that probably with some degree of foolish and undeserved reverence, maybe. Almost like I might have been a little bit proud of it. So here's what actually happened that night, and I'll have to do this sort of quickly. This is kind of the abridged version, but I explained before this character that I go and play every Christmas time, and I shave male pattern baldness into my head, and I play the role of some like 65, 70-year-old washed up fucking lounge singer who's like now on the like Rhode Island hotel lounge circuit. Okay, and he's a wash-up and a has-been. And this group, the Fog Cutters, put on this Christmas show every year. The Fog Cutters are a traditional big brass band. They've got about 20 to 25 brass players and then a rhythm section, and these two singers, Chaz and Megan, who are great friends of mine, who I love, very talented people, and they sort of like lead the show. And think of it as sort of like a variety show, like a network thing, right? So like they're playing all these show tunes and different guests come out at different times and sing different songs. The doorbell rings and they come into the house, and that's how it is, okay? And then my role in all of this, and we've been doing it for a lot of years and we've actually gotten really good at it. And the role is all these other guests come out, they sing these songs beautifully, they look beautiful, they sing wonderfully, the arrangements are fucking really lavish and well done and well performed. And then my job is to come in at some point and just completely fuck up everything for like 15 minutes, basically ruin the show for like 15 minutes. And our collective goal is to like ride the fucking train like barely off the rails to the point where it looks like the whole thing has come apart and there's no bringing it back. And then somehow it's sort of like, with the help of Megan and Chaz, like it sort of like goes back on the track, and then I just sort of get out of the way and let everybody else do their thing again for the rest of the night. So this year I'd say that it just went off the track, and that's it. So what happened was this year I got assigned to sing Baby It's Cold Outside. And I was going to be doing that with this girl, Jamie, who was a trombone player in the band. And she was going to like break off, do like a little costume change and come out and accompany me on this thing. And so, gosh, I got to try to stay focused and not get too far into the plot of everything. But anyway, Jamie and I would get together before and we would start rehearsing what we're going to do. Now, my whole thing with this is like, Baby It's Cold Outside became very polarizing this year. There's a lot of different, some people are like really upset, and it's gotten this rap as sort of like, it's sort of like a rapey song, and a lot of radio stations were pulling it from their playlist, and people were like, petitioning to have it, removed from this and that. It just got kind of crazy, right? And so whenever stuff like that happens with me, I can't help it. It's I am a button pusher. It's what I'm good at. It's what I was given in my life, and you have to take what you're given and you have to use it. If you're good at something, just you have to roll with it. And so a lot of times it's at the expense of my friends, and then other times it's at the expense of a room full of strangers, and that's actually more exciting for me because it's more difficult to do and it's a little bit less predictable. So, Jamie and I get together and I'm like, okay, if everybody thinks that this song is, this narrative is so rapey and all of this, well, let's take that and let's really like put a magnifying glass on it. Let's really blow this up, right? In the same sort of way that like South Park is very good at taking, current events or certain sort of social narratives that are happening at the time and just really sort of like, sensationalizing those things. And what it does is sort of like brings to light how ridiculous it sort of all is at the core in the first place. So I decided that that's how we're going to kind of do this, okay? We're actually going to turn this less of a song and more into an actual, an actual dialogue, an actual confrontation, okay? But if we're going to do this, then it's really important that we flip it. Because nowadays we're otherwise never going to get away with this. So I'm going to become the one who's being seduced. Okay. And the whole time through, we were like, look, it's very important that this doesn't become a violent situation. This cannot become like a domestic violence situation because that's not fucking funny in any way. Right. So we have to make very sure that this is a seduction. Like you are trying to bed me. You're not trying to hurt me or anything like that. But there was this thing where like, I eventually had to be on the ground because that was part of like where we were going with all this. Basically like she showed up at this party after I arrived, and she's this crazy ex-girlfriend who found out that I was there, and she came to basically try to seduce me and get me to leave with her. And I was like, I don't want to leave with you. I don't even want you here. Just leave. And then it escalates. And then the whole thing was she was going to get me on the ground. And that's when I was going to mace her. Try to follow me. I know. And so we're thinking like, okay, well, how do we get on the ground? Like that has to happen. We have to figure out a way to do that that's not violent and that's sort of funny, but also sort of over the top. So I'm like, okay, do you know how to do an atomic knee drop? And Jamie's like, what's an atomic knee drop? Of course. And so I said, okay, here's how it works. We're going to do this total WWF style because that's way too over the top for anybody to think is like sort of like portraying violence or whatever. Like we're just going to go WWF. You're going to deliver an atomic knee drop on me. And then I'm going to do that thing where I go running off. And as soon as I turn back in your direction, you come running through and clothesline me. It's a classic move. And of course, she's like, okay, well, that's cool, but like, what about your head? Then I'm like, I know, I get that, and I'm going to be very, very careful of it. I know how to do this. I'm going to make very certain that I fall correctly. I'm going to make sure that I fall on my left shoulder. I'm going to use my hand to protect my head. I will not hit my head. I promise. I've got this. This is on me, and I know how serious it is, and I'm going to do everything that I can to make sure that I'm not going to hurt myself. Okay? So come that night, we're getting ready to do that, and here's another part of that will explain my last post, because a lot of people, like I posted a picture where it looked like my face had been all bloodied up, and everybody was wondering what was going on. Well, this is part of that whole thing. So, a really important thing is that the band knew nothing about anything that we were going to do, nor have they ever. Every year I do this, I never let them in on exactly like how far I'm going to go and the shit that I'm going to do. I show up for the rehearsals in plain clothes. I don't get in character until right before the show, and I never really show my hand. I never really reveal everything I'm going to do, and this was no different. So anybody who was like maybe there and offended by this whole thing, anybody who knows somebody who was and has overheard them talking about it, please know this, and please tell those people, the Fog Cutters had nothing to do with any of this. They were not in on it. They did not sign off on it. They didn't approve of any of this shit. This was just me trying to take things too far, and as I always do, and this time it went a little too far, I think. They trusted me to know the boundaries, and I guess, like, in my constant search to find what the fucking boundaries are, something that's sort of problematic for me, but also, like, that keeps me alive, I think. Like, sometimes the rest of you don't entertain me enough, and I have to find ways to entertain myself, and it's this constant thing of, like, trying to establish how far can I go before I've gone too far, and sometimes I think I've done it, and then people come up and they're like, oh, that was really funny. That was hilarious what you did. And I'm like, oh, shoot. I thought it was going to piss you all off, but I guess I've still got some room to play with here. So that's what happened this year. So we're getting ready to do this, and without telling anybody, including Jamie or anybody else in the audience, nobody knew I was doing this, but I got this recipe online for fake blood. And I made it up in the dressing room, and, you know, like corn syrup and food coloring, chocolate syrup, coffee grounds. Like, I mixed all this stuff together and I tested it out on my hand. It looked so fucking real. It was crazy. I did a great job. And then I put it in this little vial, and I snuck downstairs before showtime, and I stashed it right underneath this monitor where I knew that I was going to be falling in that general area. The monitors are those little triangular things that you see at the foot of the performers when they're on stage, those of you who don't know what that is. So I hid it behind the monitor so that nobody could see it. Not even the band, not the crowd, just this little vial of fake blood. So we get out there, the time comes, and I have video of this, and I'm actually going to post it on my Instagram, and that's how I will sort of, like, announce this episode. So you can check this moment out. Moment comes, she does the atomic knee drop. It's perfect. I kind of go running off. I turn around. She comes through with the clothesline. And I told her a dozen times, I'm like, listen, don't worry about hurting me, okay? I need you to, like, come at me real hard. Like, be aggressive on the clothesline. Otherwise, we're not going to sell it. And we need to fucking sell it in order for all this to work. And, you know, I'm thinking that's okay because the point of impact is across my chest. And then also I'm going to make sure that I'm falling correctly, right? So I think our biggest fault was, like, we might have, like, I think we nailed the clothesline, and it maybe went a little too well. And then after the clothesline, as I was laying on the ground, I turned over, I grabbed this vial of blood, I dumped it over my face, and then I started to try to stand up. Well, two things happened when I stood up. One, the whole fucking room went completely quiet. Like, I was looking out at people's faces, and they were totally fucking weirded out. The band started to get really weirded out around me. Everybody around me got really pretty uncomfortable. That's one thing that happened. And adding to that, and why I remember and I identify this as maybe the point where this all happened, there was a very, very acute, like 30 or 40 seconds after, 20 or 30 seconds after I stood up, where, like, I very clearly remember I didn't know what the fuck was going on. I kind of didn't know where I was and what I was doing. Like, what am I doing on this stage? I'm sort of looking at my clothes and I'm like, am I Tony right now, or am I this character? What am I doing? And look at all these people in the audience, and everybody looks really uncomfortable. So I'm sort of like, what did I do? What's happening? Like, children who were dressed up like reindeer were crying. I didn't really know how to put things back on track. I didn't know how to, like, wrap the whole thing up. And I forgot the mace entirely. So the whole thing just sort of started falling to pieces around me. And then the song ended. And like I said, nobody clapped. Nobody cheered. Nobody laughed. It just, like, very unceremoniously ended. And everybody was staring at me like, you better pull this together. But I'm sort of like, now in retrospect, like, I was fucking dinged up at the time. Like, I was very confused. My head had been sort of shifted a little bit. And so all I could think of was, I remembered this blood on my face and stuff. And I was like, maybe I should go to the bathroom, you know, like playing along, like, the bathroom in the house. Maybe I should go to the bathroom before I sing my next song and clean up. And Megan was like, I think that's a good idea. So I go upstairs. My friend McCrae, who's, like, the house manager, he's waiting at the top of the stairs of the backstage room for, like, he's got these, like, towels waiting for me and all this stuff, and he looks kind of concerned. And I'm like, dude, it's fake. It's fake. And he's like, you should look in the mirror. And I go over and I look in the mirror, and the way that I hit myself with this blood, the way that it spackled and smeared sort of like made my stomach sink, where it's like, this looks so fucking real. And so what I realized happened was when I stood up, nobody saw that blood as like a joke or something funny. What it looked like to everybody, including Jamie and the audience and the band, it looked like when Jamie came through on that clothesline, that inadvertently she basically just fucking exploded my nose, like busted my fucking nose. And I think that's what everybody thought. I was like, oh my God, he's bleeding, and I don't think he even realizes it. And and then it did look, I guess, pretty much, well, not somewhat. It just straight up looked violent at that point, which I didn't really intend for that much to happen. But so this whole thing went off the tracks. It turned into a bloody mess, and everybody was made very uncomfortable by it, which there was a part of me that felt like I've been trying to reach this level of discomfort in a room full of people for a long time with this character. A lot of years I've been doing these shows with this guy, and I'm trying to figure out just how far I can push people. And like, if there was any victory to take from this whole thing, it's that I struck awkward fucking gold with this. I also think I made some friends angry at me. I think I made some people angry at me, and I've had to sort of reconcile with that. But that's part of show business, I guess, right? So anyway, the other thing that happened, which was stupid, was that, well, I apparently don't need to actually hit my head again anymore. And that maybe that was a valuable thing for me to learn. All it took was just a little whiplash, just to sort of like, I just had to jar things a little bit. Okay. And the couple weeks following that, I felt a little funny, but I didn't think much about it. I just felt kind of weird. I got nauseous sometimes, but I was okay. And then one day, about, I don't know, a week or two after that happened, or a week or so, I'd say, I moved a little bit too quickly to go put something in the trash, and I came back and I sat down, and I was dizzy as fuck, and I was like, uh-oh, I got nauseous, and immediately I started throwing up. And then that sort of like confirmed for me, like, I remember thinking like, shit, I'm fucking concussed again. And so another week goes by. I actually was almost done doing another podcast episode when I started feeling real fucking bad, and listening back to certain things, I wasn't making any sense. Like I talked about before, I was rambling, and I kind of put that down. I thought maybe I'm not feeling well enough to do this. And then about a week later, I tried to play my drums for the first time since then, because I was supposed to do this fill-in show. And the next morning, after I played my drums for like 3 hours, that was when everything started up. I started waking up with the bed spins every day, every night, like sober bed spins. It's the worst. You don't even earn them. When you're younger and you get the bed spins from drinking too much, at least you're like, well, I had a good time. This is just the price I have to pay. When you're just sober and you're having constant bed spins for 7 hours a night, for 3 weeks at a time, it's fucking awful. And the vertigo came back, the confusion came back. So it would have been January 10th at this point. I put myself on a 2-week concussion protocol. I thought that should give me enough time. I'm not that rattled this time. This wasn't a real bad one. So 2 weeks should be fine. No drumming, no music, no podcasts, no stressing my brain over stuff. I'm just going to sit quietly. I'm going to take it really easy. Well, 2 weeks came and went. I didn't feel any better. In fact, in some ways, I was feeling worse. And I'm thinking, this is a fucking drag. And eventually, it got to be 3 weeks, 4 weeks, up to right about now. I'd say I just started feeling better. Today being Super Bowl Sunday, I'd say I finally started feeling better on Thursday. And I thought, you have good days and bad days with a concussion, so maybe this is just a good day. I felt good on Friday, and then I felt good again yesterday. So now I think I'm like just well enough to do this again, and I hope it sticks, right? I could end up tomorrow just flipping right back and going backwards again. And if that happens, I'm probably going to end up going into the hospital and really trying to figure out what's going on. But otherwise, I should be clear, I think, and we'll see if this keeps rolling on. But that's what's been going on. And, it's just further evidence that I need to be even like way more careful than I've been with all of this shit. And so that's what happened. So sorry about that. And, like I was actually on the phone with Travis the Millennial last night, and I remember saying to him, like, I got to come back and do this. And it's just like, it's just getting, I'm really nervous about, like giving off this impression. Like, I had to walk away from this and put it down for several weeks back in the fall. I put kind of a lot of things in my life down in the fall because I needed time to recover from something and just to sort of get my shit together. And then, you know, I didn't foresee that as soon as I sort of got myself up off the mat, I'd be down taking a knee again. And, you know, it's like, I'm afraid I'm going to be like a bad date for all, you know, anybody that's started to listen to this show and started to be into it. Well, you know, I fucking ghost you here, then I ghost you there, and then, you know, all of a sudden I'm letting you know all this other shit about me. And it's sort of like, you go on a date and it's like, oh, it's so interesting, this person's so funny, I really like talking to them. And then after like a couple dates, they start being like, well, you know, there is this one thing, like I did watch my mother murder my father in my bedroom when I was 11 years old. And then it's like, what the fuck? And then there's all this, there's a lot of fucking baggage on this person. I don't know if I want to deal with this. And like, I don't want to become that person to you. And I promise you that, you know, my life doesn't generally go this way. I don't have these kinds of setbacks every 2 months. You know, I might have once a year where I need to step away from things for 4 or 5 weeks. That's for sure. I won't lie about that. But generally it doesn't keep happening, you know, maybe twice a year that will happen. But, so I want to, hopefully I can put the brakes on that and I can just kind of like keep rolling with this now, start hitting you every week again and all of that. But anyway, you know, I'm sorry for getting away from things, but there is one other thing about this that I really should talk about. And this is a bit more serious. I want to just share something like really, because I don't, this may affect things too on this show. I don't know, but this is like some sort of like just heavy for a second. And I kind of like in the process of trying to feel better and heal from this whole thing, I actually ended up picking up a habit on some shit. And I don't really know how to feel about the whole thing right now. But this is a place for me to be like totally fucking honest. So one day I'm out and I ran into this friend and we're talking about this stuff, and like he gave me these couple things and he's like, I used to do these. I had like a really hard time I went through like a year ago, and just try them. And if you need more, I can like tell you where to get them and just check it out. And I'm not usually, you know, I've been around these things for most of my adult life. I've seen them everywhere I fucking go. I've never been interested in doing it. But I was like pretty desperate. I wanted to feel better. And if this shit is going to help me start to fucking feel better, then whatever. So I took them and I came back here, did a couple of them, and I didn't even like it, to be honest with you. Like when I first started, I didn't much care for it at all, but somehow started thinking about it more and more, and then like every day I fucking needed them, and next thing I know, I'm fucking hooked. And they're called I always forget how to say it. Actually, I've got a couple of them laying right around here on this table, because actually I just did one like an hour ago. Here we are. So they're called Sudoku puzzles. You get them in the puzzle section of the USA Today. Oh, can't get enough of these fucking things. And the whole page is great. The whole, you know, the USA Today, the puzzles page, you get a crossword, you get a quick cross, you get up and down words. It's so much fun. And so every morning I get up now and I get a USA Today. I come here and I start my day by doing all these puzzles and trying to get my fucking brain working. And, you know, like I said, at first I didn't much care for them. They seemed very confusing. Now I fucking can't get enough, man. I did a fucking 5-star difficulty one yesterday. Oh, it was the fucking best. Got lost in that thing for like 3.5 fucking hours. Then the best is when you think you're done, you're kind of sad about it, and then you realize that one of your blocks is all fucked up. And when you fuck up a Sudoku, you got to erase a whole bunch. You got to start all. It's fucking. Then I was like, oh man, I have to start all over. And then I was like, oh wow, I get to start all over, and it's like a whole new puzzle. I love them. Okay, now seriously though, the last thing I need to do, because I'm a music person and I can't help it, I am of the ilk, of music people who we think because we're music people that our opinions about music are so important and we're so enlightened and we just need to impart on the rest of you laymen this wisdom about what you should be checking out and listening to and all of that. So I'm no different. I can't help it. I have to do that. Okay, so let me bless you with what I feel was my favorite record of 2018. And in doing so, I'm just going to quickly sort of like run down all the things that I talked about on my show this year. And each of these things, I spent more time, like talked about them at length on previous episodes. And right now I'm just kind of like going to give you the artist and the record and a song to listen to. And then at the end of that, I'll get to like what I think was, like the big ones. So starting things off, like what we first got. Okay, we'll see how fast I can get through this. See if my brain can keep up with my mouth. First thing we got that I was excited about this year was the Black Thought stuff came out. The new solo Black Thought stuff that we've all been waiting for a long time, even though it wasn't this Masterpiece Theater shit that was rumored to exist in like 2001. I think some of us are still waiting to hear that, but at any rate, we still got long-awaited solo Black Thought stuff. Black Thought being one of the two founding members of The Roots, who are like absolutely fucking legendary. They've been in the fucking hip-hop game for 3 decades now. They have constantly been relevant. They have constantly been at the front of the pack. They've constantly been the guys setting the bar, setting the standard, and like total fucking like visionary shit. And it's not that I need to hear Black Thought without The Roots. I still love him. He's my favorite. In my opinion, he's the greatest of all time. But it is nice to hear him outside of The Roots. It is nice to hear him with like a little bit more of a conventional, traditional backdrop behind him musically as an MC. So that stuff was really interesting. I'm going to give you, from that Black Thought stuff, I'm going to suggest you listen to this track called 215, okay? Beyond that, we got the Kamasi Washington record that came out this year. That record was called Heaven and Earth. If you're a drummer, it's a must-have. There's so much fucking incredible drumming on that. There's incredible everything going on that record. It was definitely, in my opinion, it was one of the most like sort of groundbreaking, forward-moving, progressive records that came out this year. Super important. That record, again, was called Heaven and Earth, and I would check out The Invincible Youth. We finally got the Big Red Machine. See? We finally got the Big Red Machine record this year, which was the collaboration of Justin Vernon and Aaron Dresner of The National. Justin Vernon being from Bon Iver, which that actually was definitely the best show that I saw of 2018 when I saw Bon Iver down at the Ryman in Nashville last fall. That was fucking insane. But anyway, we get this new record from Justin Vernon and Aaron Dresner, and it's fucking awesome. It's about as good as you would expect it to be. My favorite songs on that are a song called Lila, and then I also really like this song called Forest Green. So start with those. I also found this girl recently, but I didn't really get any time to talk about her on my show, but I really like it. She's nominated for a Grammy, as she should be, and she just goes by H-E-R, and I get this really kind of like cool vibe off her. I actually get kind of like a Prince type of vibe off her. Not so much like stylistically, but just like virtuosically. She plays all these different instruments. She's got a ton of swagger about her, and her shit's really good. I would check out H.E.R. and I would start with Let Me In. I talked about the Rooston Kelly record, how much I love that. Rooston Kelly put out this record called Dying Star. I loved it. I mentioned this song called Cover My Tracks. I mentioned that was probably one of my favorite songs of the year, and that still stands true. I love that fucking song. So start there. There's a song called Faceplant that's also constantly growing. The whole record's growing on me, but those two are great. This weird thing has begun to happen with Rooston Kelly, though, as like in the last couple months, I've had a little bit of downtime, as you know. And I've been kind of trying to get caught up again on The Walking Dead. No spoilers, don't worry, but I am hung up on Season 8. And one thing that's happening that's really strange with regards to Rooston Kelly is that the more I watch this, there's this character called Negan, who is supposed to be like the sort of like the antagonist and the villain and the adversary in this whole show. But I'm really starting to actually like Negan. The longer it goes on, you're starting to see this little bit of an emotional side from him, and I'm starting to like him more and more. Like, I think Negan's a cool motherfucker. And there's something that wouldn't surprise me anymore if there was this side episode and you found out that Negan actually had like a band and sang these songs and played music, like him and a bunch of the fucking saviors on Tuesdays and Sundays. They hang out in the fucking big warehouse by the giant fire and just play music. And this weird thing keeps happening, and all I can think about is like, if that were the case with Negan, then I think it would sound exactly like Roostin Kelly. That's what it all reminds me of now, and I can't seem to separate the two anymore. It's very strange. I hope that doesn't ruin either one for any of you guys, but and I also don't even know like if that makes any sense or not. I'm just throwing that out there, and I hope it comes off as a good thing because that's how I mean it. Anyway, well, whatever. See, I'm rambling. This is fucking weird. So anyway, that's how I've been feeling about the Roostin Kelly stuff and how I've been feeling about Negan from The Walking Dead. Whatever, that's what's going on in my brain right now. Welcome to it. Let's see what else. Miguel finally put everything together. I loved that new Miguel record. He put out a record called War and Leisure. The last two Miguel records I've loved, but they haven't been like whole entire things that I loved. It was either like a fucking grand slam home run or it was like a little bloop grounder through the gap at shortstop. And finally with this record, it was a whole fucking set of home runs. I loved it. War and Leisure was fucking awesome. I would check that out from Miguel, and I would start with a tune called City of Angels. I talked about that guy Jerry Bird that I kind of discovered this year. It's not new at all. It's actually very old, I think from the 70s and 80s, but I'm loving that. The pedal steel has become one of my favorite instruments in the world, and I've been constantly for like probably 6 or 7 years now, I've been searching for like some shit where the pedal steel player is like the main focus, like he's the star, he's the centerpiece of the record, and I finally found that in Jerry Bird, and it's just so fucking good. It's relaxing, it's fucking beautiful. It's just all instrumental pedal steel shit, and I love it. Try to check out some Jerry Bird. BYRD, just like Bobby Bird from James Brown. Jerry Bird stuff is great. And then lastly, before I get to the big ones, there's my dude Gus Dapperton, who I mentioned, and I still am really excited about Gus Dapperton. In fact, I am like growingly excited about Gus Dapperton. I really, really, really fucking love just about everything that kid's about. Like I said before, he's got his own thing. He's very, very, very unique, and he's very fucking genuine, and that's huge for me. Like, it's like, he's one of the people I'm most excited about coming up, and I mentioned these songs called I'm Just Snacking and another one called Beyond Amends, but since then he's dropped these two new singles, one called World Class Cinema, and just recently dropped one called My Favorite Fish, and I'm loving both those a lot. He's got a new record coming out in April, and as of right now, that's at the top of my like most anticipated records of 2019 is the new shit from Gus Dapperton. I'm really fucking into this dude, and I've kind of like, I don't know, like that's my horse in the race right now. I really like him a lot. So Gus Dapperton, get checking that out. And now finally we get to, I think it was my first episode, I talked about the Michael Ralt record. And right off the bat, like within 2 days of listening to it, I was like, this is the front runner. This might be my favorite album of the year. I'm not sure anything can fuck with this. And I said at that time, Father John Misty had a new record coming out. That might have something to say about it. If Andy Schaaf puts out a new record this year, that might have something to say about it. Well, Andy Schaaf didn't put out a new record this year, but right at the bell, just a few weeks ago, he put out this record with a side project, this new band that he did called Fox Warren. One word, Fox Warren, Foxwarren, and it's fucking awesome. But it wasn't quite strong enough to get in the conversation between Michael Ralt and Father John Misty. But that Father John Misty record came out, God's Favorite Customer, and man, I fucking love it. There's something about that guy that I'm so into right now. I'm like down with like everything that I've read from him in interviews, everything he has to say in his songs and his lyrics. I love how he makes records. I love his production. I love his arrangements. And so, you know, there was that, and the Michael Ralt record were so fucking close. That Michael Ralt record is fucking insanely good. It is so fucking good. But you know, there's a few ballads on this new Father John Misty record. Just Dumb Enough to Try, Please Don't Die, and the songwriter especially, holy shit. And there was just, you know, like I said, there was that thing back in the fall where I had to kind of like, I had to go through some things for a little while, and what's kind of separated that from the Michael Ralt record is that there were those songs, and I kind of leaned on those a little bit, and those sort of like dug out a little niche in my soul, in my spirit with that record, and therefore like it kind of has a place, like a special place in my life. And so it's for that reason and that reason alone that I gotta break the tie. And so Michael Ralt made a hell of a record. It's called New Day Tonight, but I gotta go with Father John Misty on Record of the Year. And what's really remarkable about that is that in doing that, I realized that Pure Comedy came out in 2017. So like he strung together not only 2 records in 2 years' time, which is sort of like, it doesn't happen. That used to be pretty standard in the 60s, 70s, and shit like that, as far as good music goes. But you don't get that very often anymore. So not only like Pure Comedy was hands down my favorite record last year, nothing even came close to it. And so what that means is that he has the distinction. Josh Tillman made back-to-back favorite record of 2017 and favorite record of 2018, 2 in a row. So congratulations, Josh Tillman, album of the year 2018 and 2017, 2 in a row. That moment when we ever get a chance to sit down and have some drinks together and talk about religion, and then, you know, wherever else things lead us, I'll buy the first 2 rounds of beers. They'll be like your little trophies for album of the year, like little drinkable trophies for you. And then after that, you can buy all the rest of the rounds because you've got way more money than me. But I look forward to that someday. I hope that that happens. And that's my call. God's Favorite Customer by Father John Misty. That was my favorite record of the year in 2018. You know, I know it's a little bit man heavy. I'm sorry, ladies. Okay? Do better this year. What do you want me to fucking say? I don't know. Amy Mann didn't put out a new record this year. I loved Mental Illness, that Amy Mann record that came out last year. I fucking loved it. Still no new music from Lauryn Hill. A lot of, you know, like that Carter's record that came out, I really expected that. Like, wow, Jay-Z and Beyonce, this is gonna be the fucking ultimate. And I had high hopes for that. It's good, but it wasn't great. I mean, I don't know. I just, you know, I didn't, none of you moved me very much this year. Don't take it personally. It's not sexist. I'm not telling you're not good enough. You're not as good as men. You are. You know that. I'm just saying those were my fucking favorite records. Whatever. Okay? So that's that. Now I got to start getting out of here. There's another thing I want to talk about in terms of music. You know, like now we can put 2018 behind us, start moving forward, and I'm going to do that right away in the next episode. There's this band who just put out a new record that I've been waiting for forever. They're one of my favorite bands on the entire planet. I love them. There's a lot of deep shit to this band, and there's a story behind the whole thing. I'm going to talk about who I think is the most important band in rock and roll right now. So that's what's coming up. I would have loved to have made this like a little funnier and more interesting and get into some different stuff, but mostly I just want to tell you what's been going on, and just I really appreciate you being here and listening to this, okay? So with that said, I'm going to sign off, and then I'm actually just going to get started on the next episode so I can get that to you in the next few days, okay? Thanks for being here on the Tony McNaboe Show. I'm Tony McNaboe. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and I'll talk with you real soon. All right, then. See you later.